There are some evenings that just feel wrong, even when nothing's happened yet. I know how that sounds, like I'm trying to scare myself or make my life more dramatic than it actually is. But I swear, on that night, I felt it in my chest before I even looked out the window. My name is Josh. I'm 28. I work remote tech support from a one-bedroom apartment in Jacksonville, Florida. Most days start and end with the same stuff. Bad coffee, endless emails, the neighbor's dog barking at shadows. But that day started off normal, and still by sunset it was like something in the air was telling me to get ready for something bad. The first thing I noticed was the silence. Usually there's traffic noise, some idiot revving their Honda, kids running around the parking lot, even the ice cream truck that plays that awful song on repeat. But around 5 o'clock, the neighborhood felt like a movie set after everyone went home. Then I noticed my neighbor, old Mrs. Pearson, standing out in the hall just staring at her hands. She was usually all smiles and southern hospitality, always bringing banana bread that tasted like dust. Today, she didn't even look up when I said hi, just stared at the veins on her hands, rubbing them as if she expected something to move under the skin. I thought she'd been sick, or maybe her meds were off. But the real weirdness started when I stepped outside and saw a big military van just parked down the block. No lights on. No one inside that I could see, but the engine was running. I'd never seen anything like that around here. I tried to joke with my buddy Sam over text, but he just replied with "dude, not today," and ghosted me. Then came the blood. Not a lot. Not like a crime scene, but a weird streak running down the sidewalk, right near the mailbox cluster where everyone picks up their Amazon packages. I told myself it was probably some raccoon or maybe a possum that got hit. But there weren't any feathers, no fur, just that thin, wet red line. I was staring at it when my phone buzzed. News alerts, one after the other. But none of them agreed. One said there'd been a gas leak downtown. Another was talking about a contained incident at a hospital. Then something about a wild animal on the loose. But nobody sounded worried. I mean, not the way you're supposed to be worried if there's blood on the street and old ladies are acting like zombies. Tried calling my sister, who lives out in Tampa. Straight to voicemail. Called Sam again. No answer. The texts weren't going through. I even tried to check Twitter, but the app just kept spinning. That's when I really started to freak out. I told myself it was just a network outage, but then I realized I couldn't hear the neighbor's dog anymore. And that's when I knew something was wrong that wasn't just a me thing. It felt like the world was shutting off one light bulb at a time. About half an hour later, I saw someone walking their dog on the sidewalk, a guy I'd seen before but never spoken to. The dog was pulling on the leash, whining, trying to drag its owner back inside. The man looked pale, his eyes wide like he'd just seen a car accident. But when I waved from my window, he ignored me, staring up and down the empty street, like he expected something to jump out from the bushes. That's when I realized the sun was almost gone, and the shadows were getting long, way longer than they had any right to be. It looked like the twilight just wouldn't stop stretching, swallowing the edges of everything. I decided I wasn't going outside again tonight. I checked every lock on the windows and doors, twice. Closed the blinds, turned off the porch light, even though I usually leave it on for the delivery guys. I wanted to call my mom, just to hear her voice, but every call failed. So I started moving furniture in front of the front door, which felt insane. I stacked my crappy little kitchen chairs, shoved my bookshelf up against it. I even taped up cardboard over the windows, which looked stupid but made me feel a tiny bit safer. I kept telling myself it's nothing, it's just a blackout or a chemical spill or a dumb prank, but the air was thick and the hair on my arms wouldn't go down. It was only around 7:30 when I realized I was holding a kitchen knife and pacing my living room. I wasn't sure what I expected to do with it, fight off a home invasion, or maybe just have something to hold in case my nerves got any worse. But I couldn't shake the feeling that if I opened the blinds, I'd see something waiting on the other side. The last time I looked out, I caught a glimpse of a shadow by the dumpsters, too tall and too thin, almost melting into the fade. It didn't move like a person, and I turned away so fast I nearly dropped my phone. All I could do was keep the TV on, even though the channels were just looping the same footage. Stay calm, stay inside, officials are responding. With no actual footage, just some anchor in a suit, sweating and blinking too much. I checked my pantry, took inventory of the cans, the ramen, the water jugs. I kept telling myself, "You're overreacting. You're being paranoid," but in my gut, I knew that something was crawling out of the shadows in my town tonight, and it wasn't the kind of thing that would care if I believed in it or not. I kept thinking about the military van, and the silence, and the way the sun went down so fast it felt like someone pulled a curtain on the whole block. I tried to text Sam one last time, but the little green bar stuck at sending, so I put the knife down, tried to eat, but the food tasted like nothing. I locked myself in my bedroom, with my back against the door, listening for sounds that shouldn't be there. I told myself I'd be fine if I just made it to morning, but I didn't believe it. The last thing I saw before I closed my eyes was a flash of movement outside my window. Too fast, too smooth. Definitely not a cat or a cocoon. I pressed myself flat against the wall and waited for something to happen, heart hammering so loud I was sure the thing outside could hear it. That's how my apocalypse started. Not with an explosion, not with sirens, but with a feeling that grew until it swallowed me whole. I don't know if I ever really fell asleep that night. I must have passed out, because when I blinked open my eyes it was dark as pitch and there was this scraping sound coming from somewhere close, way too close, like inside the walls. My mouth was dry, the air felt thicker than it should. I checked my phone again, praying for one damn bar of signal. Nothing. The little no service taunted me. I got up and pressed my ear to the door, holding my breath. At first, it was dead silent, but then I heard it. Just a soft, dragging scrape, like nails on drywall, or maybe someone's shoe sliding along linoleum. I told myself it was an animal. Then I remembered that shadow outside, the way it seemed to slip behind the dumpsters without making a sound, like it wasn't even real. My heart was thumping so hard I wondered if it might just stop altogether, and I almost laughed at myself, but the sound came out shaky. Then I heard footsteps in the hallway, slow, unhurried, too heavy for Mrs. Pearson, and too weirdly steady to be one of the kids. I peeked through the crack under my door and saw nothing, just the usual gray carpet, but something was out there. I could feel it. I don't know how long I sat there, clutching the kitchen knife and my stupid childhood baseball bat, waiting for the footsteps to come back. At some point, the scraping stopped, but my nerves didn't. When the sun finally started to lighten the blinds, I crept out of my room, every muscle locked up with anxiety. I was convinced the thing from last night would be standing in my living room, but it was just empty, except for the shadows pooling in every corner. The street outside looked the same as always, but quieter. I scanned the parking lot and saw the military van was gone, but in its place there was a patch of blood smeared across the pavement, bright, fresh, and thick, like somebody got dragged away. I stood there at the window, paralyzed, and watched as another neighbor, James from 1B, tried to leave with his daughter. He looked frantic, carrying a duffel bag and dragging her by the arm. She kept whining, tugging at his sleeve, and suddenly she started coughing, deep, dry, violent. He glanced around, locked eyes with me for a second, then hurried her to their car, shoving her inside without buckling her in. He didn't look back up. I felt like I was watching a movie, but I was in it, and nobody gave me the script. I went to call the police, but my cell still didn't work. I tried the landline, and it just spat out static. I turned on the news again, and now every channel was just looping the same emergency broadcast, that blaring, robotic voice telling everyone to remain inside. The banner at the bottom just kept scrolling. Multiple disturbances reported. Stay calm. Await further instruction. No details, nothing specific, just a vague threat hanging in the air. I tried to text Sam again, no luck. Then I checked his location on Find My Friends, and it showed him at home, last updated hours ago. That's when I heard banging from upstairs, like someone slamming their fists on the floor above me. It didn't stop. It was frantic, desperate, like someone was trying to break through. I ran out into the hallway, my heart trying to beat its way out of my ribs, and I saw Mrs. Pearson's door wide open. Her apartment was trashed. Couch flipped, TV smashed, framed photos on the ground. I called out, "Mrs. Pearson, are you okay?" But no one answered. The air smelled sour, like pennies in something rotten. I almost ran, but then I heard a choking noise from her bathroom. I stepped inside, stupid and brave and desperate, and I found her crouched in the tub, hands over her mouth, blood seeping through her fingers. Her eyes were glassy, unfocused. She hissed at me, actually hissed like an animal, and then she lunged, way faster than I thought possible for a woman in her 70s. I dropped my bat and bolted, slamming the door behind me. Heart racing, my hands shaking so hard I could barely lock the door to my own place. I backed up into my kitchen, slid to the floor, and tried to catch my breath. My mind was scrambling for an explanation. Some weird sickness, a mental breakdown, drugs, anything. But the truth my gut kept whispering. But I couldn't stop seeing her face. Her teeth stained red, her eyes empty and hungry. That's when the screaming started outside, raw and desperate, echoing across the parking lot. I crawled up to the window and saw James from 1B stumbling out of his car, dragging his daughter behind him. But she wasn't coughing anymore. She was tearing into his neck, her mouth wide, blood pouring down his shirt. He was begging for help, but nobody came. I could hear other doors slamming, people yelling, car alarms wailing. I watched as she dropped her dad to the pavement and looked straight up at me, her eyes wide and shining, mouth ringed with red. I froze, praying she hadn't seen me, but deep down I knew she had. She started to move toward the building, slow and steady, like she wasn't in a hurry. Like she knew I couldn't run. That's when I made the decision. I barricaded the front door again, shoved everything heavy I could find in front of it, and grabbed whatever food and water I had. I texted Sam, even though I knew it wouldn't go through, and left one last voicemail for my mom. "If you get this, I love you. Stay inside. Don't open the door for anyone." I shut every window, drew every curtain, and sat in the dark, gripping the baseball bat like it was my only chance. The world outside was gone. No traffic, no barking, just the slow, shuffling footsteps and the occasional scream. Night fell again, and it got even quieter. I barely moved. Every little sound made me jump. I kept thinking of Mrs. Pearson in the tub, her bloody teeth, her inhuman speed, and that look on the girl's face as she chewed her own father's throat open. It wasn't a virus, wasn't some kind of zombie movie. It was something older, smarter, meaner. I kept waiting for the monsters to break down my door, but instead I just sat there, trying not to breathe too loudly, listening to the darkness fill up with whispers and footsteps and the promise of things that lived in the shadows. That's when I knew this wasn't about sickness, this was about change. The world wasn't ours anymore.